I'll move to the instruction section and coming forward for the item the 2019-2020 semester 1 update from instructional technology. Making a presentation is Ms. Earl McLaurin, instructional technology coordinator, Matt Murray, teacher leader for instructional technology, Amber Hoover, librarian, and Christopher Thames, senior director for educational technology. This is an information item, so no action is required. It is in compliance with Strategic Plan Priority 2 and District Policy 6:60 and 6:235.
Good evening, Board. Thank you for having us back again. This is an update on CTIP report that we had done last year. And last year we were embarking on some work that you're going to see evidence of in this presentation. We also have some new faces up here, so I'd like to go down the line and just do a quick introduction, if I may.
Arlene McLaurin, instructional technology coordinator.
Matt McMurray, instructional technology teacher leader.
Amber Hooper, librarian.
And to start off our presentation, I'm going to turn this over to Earl to get us started.
So the first thing I want to do is...
And we should, we were missing the link. Oh, that was it. Sorry, folks.
You can move that.
Yeah.
Oh, that's actually
there we go.
I just want to take this time to thank all of our students and parents and teachers for their continued voluntary participation in our annual Bright Lights survey. So much so that we had over half of our students again voluntarily take this survey. That is an 80%. That is a 60%, I believe, jump. It's directly due to the creation of the advisory, so that really helped us. And almost 80% of our teachers get my mind together. 80% of our teachers participated. Parents, of course, have historically and enthusiastically been responsive. So, next slide. So this is, if you look across all the domains from last year, despite the emerging ranking over there in the 4 Cs, we have had some growth. In the classroom, again, domain of teacher use of the 4 Cs, digital citizenship, and teacher 21st century skills. The slight change in the other domains is mostly due to the much higher response rate that I talked about from last year. However, according to our Bright Lights rep, our data is still statistically significant.
Overall, since our implementation of Bright Lights and our subsequent one-to-one, we've seen steady growth overall in technology integration, are currently performing higher than the national average. In terms of growth from this year to from the last year to this year, it appears that we've had a slight dip in the last year in both access and environment. We consulted with Bright Lights. Their interpretation of this is that it's the higher pool of respondents. So we had a significantly higher number of respondents this year than years prior. Now, statistically significant numbers should indicate that those adjustments shouldn't rely on the population. However, we feel that we're getting responses from areas of the population that had not been reached previously, specifically through those advisories, and that attributes to some of the differences that you see. Given our trending proficiency in access skills and environment, I'm going to turn this over to Matt. He's going to take us a little deeper into the classroom domain.
All right. Just as a reminder, according to historical national Bright Lights data, this domain is most difficult to make significant data changes. Gains in necessities that teachers look at how they deliver instruction with technology. As well, the technology gap between our students who have access to digital technology during their entire education and our teachers who more than likely haven't had that same access is a natural factor as well. However, we had slight gains in these areas of the classroom domain over the last year in terms of student digital citizenship, teacher use of the 4 Cs, and assistive technology, which for the purposes of Bright Bites, one thing I'd point out up there, if you notice, all 3 of the metrics show slight gains from last year's numbers. They are slight in terms of number, but for significant gains, we're actually relatively close. We're about halfway there in terms of what our concept of Bright Bites considers significant gains. All right, digging even deeper into those classroom games, students are being engaged in authentic problem solving and hands-on experiments. It's our hypothesis that this increase is a direct result of our rapid increase in project-based learning happening in our makerspace and in our classroom spaces.
Before I comment on this slide, I want to be clear about the number difference that we keep mentioning, and the difference of students who took it last year and this year. Last year we had 677 students voluntarily take the cert rate. This year we had 1,767, so that is a gigantic leap. And again, the reason why we had some of those dips in the areas that you saw on the domain map from the beginning slide. In terms of utilization of online audio and video, teachers are increasingly integrating digital audio and video resources into their instruction. However, once we really dug into the classroom data between both teachers and students, we started seeing a trend in how teachers' intent was unintentionally impacting our students. In terms of cultivating their digital voice, students still aren't creating content for wider audiences, meaning once an assignment is returned from their teacher, students don't know what to do with it. Which in a world where paper applications and resumes are a thing of the past, this seems odd. As well, students aren't even creating content to be shared with their peers, so their collaboration skills aren't being developed either. And finally, if we look at the critical thinking, the catty corner graphs on the screen, the critical thinking skills in particular, yes, our teachers are doing a great job of, again, utilizing digital resources and instruction, but unfortunately the larger impact is that students aren't getting those critical thinking skills of how to evaluate and use, digital sources, because those resources are being pre-curated from their teacher, which after they leave OPRF, they won't have access to that. Similarly, we've had an increase in how often digital citizenship skills, and for the purposes of this presentation, that means being safe online, online searching, digital etiquette, etc., is being taught. Again, however, we noticed when we asked students once again about those digital citizenship skills, we saw the larger impact of that increase. Whether it's a disconnect between how students and teachers understand the term digital citizenship, as you can all see, 65% of students reported that they are just getting 1 hour or less every year in instruction on online presence, but they're online every day. Similarly, 53% of students spend 1 hour or less a year learning about and evaluating the credibility of sources, but they're creating and completing work every day online. So again, who's evaluating these resources? Well, our teachers and our librarians, which is awesome, but looking at the larger impact, how are students learning for themselves to actually evaluate sources so they can avoid things when they leave here like plagiarism and copyright infringement. The good news is, again, these are all trending with national numbers in terms of the responses on teacher use of the 4 Cs. So we aren't alone in these growth areas. And our OPRF librarian, Amber Hooper, is going to show you how we've been addressing some of these growth areas.
All right, so some areas where the library has been addressing historical issues in the Bright Light survey or when we do information literacy instruction. When it comes to critical thinking and communication, we focus on searching for and accessing sources, evaluating those sources, identifying them, knowing what you're looking at when you're online, developing research questions, note-taking, paraphrasing. And then when it comes to creativity and cooperation, we have taught copyright-friendly searching, always citing sources, Scribble for collaboration when doing group projects, designing and formatting. And so there's a few ways that we implement these skills directly. I created research guides over the summer as a singular place for teachers and students to go in order to find useful guides on a number of information literacy and research skills in order to have school-wide consistency related to how we teach and speak about research skills. I presented these to science and history on September P-Day. Another thing that I did, and these are both linked on here, is I worked closely with the models of physics, chem, and bio teachers very closely. And with them, we developed a 4 to 6 day library lesson, vertically aligned from those freshmen through juniors, focusing on the information literacy skills needed for their year-long research projects that are presented at the Symposium in the spring. 26 sections of models classes came in, so it's approximately 520 students for 2 to 6 days of instruction so far. And with them, I taught them database navigation, using Wikipedia as a tool, source evaluation, utilizing lateral reading in order to determine who's behind the information online, what do other sources say about that information online, because in that class, they have to find all their own stuff. They're not handed anything. Effective note-taking, creating a guiding question, advanced search, navigating academic journal articles, paraphrasing, and citing. And I got a lot of positive feedback from the models teachers about the way that the background sections turned out, the way the quality of the sources this year versus before we implemented this instruction. We also teach all of these critical thinking, communication, creativity, cooperation skills when we have drop-in classes from all the divisions. And then finally, the English Embed project, talked about last year that Matt's going to talk about next, is just getting started in the library for our information literacy part of it, which Louise, the English liaison librarian, is currently scheduling. And that focuses on foundational skills related to search, access, source evaluation, and citation. That's what we've been doing.
All right. So I'm going to talk about one of our efforts to inject the 4 C's as well as digital literacy and citizenship into the 9th grade curriculum. Early in the fall, I developed a curriculum based on creating digital portfolios that students would use throughout their freshman year in English and hopefully beyond. We then piloted the curriculum in 15 sections of freshman English classes to over 350 kids. And we saw remarkable gains in students' level of comfort with the technology tools and digital literacy skills that we taught. Here's a good clip. So I just want to bring your attention to the purple and the green there. That's students being pretty comfortable with the material. The red and the blue is students being less comfortable with the material. So you can see the before and our pre-assessment compared to after. And I'll just go through a few of the tools that we taught. So digital portfolios, Google Sites, which is Web 2.0 development, Canva, which is an online graphic design platform, Google Drawing, so students created their own watermarks, and then watermarking in general, which is a professional skill, as well as Creative Commons, so students licensed their work and protected it online. And copyright and fair use law, which is a very valuable skill to have online, looking at different materials and knowing what you can and cannot use legally. And finally, we asked them whether or not they thought creating a digital portfolio is a good idea. And you can see at the beginning, 36% said yes. In our post-assessment data, we saw almost a 30-point jump, so up to 64%. And the next steps are we're returning in the spring for social media and a research project. Amber highlighted in collaboration with the library. We're also developing a plan for training and fully rolling out the curriculum to all freshman classes. And then lastly, we'll be working on vertically aligned curriculum for the 10th grade as well.
So to sum up how we plan to move forward, we want to continue to focus on teacher use of the 4 C's, as well as digital and information literacy and 21st century learning. The way that breaks down is listed on the screen. However, for us to just be real with you, based on this year's data and our historical and national data, we realized that in order to really make a move in the 4 C's, and by extension, students' use of the 4 C's, we need to update and address teacher technology gaps, which is not a knock against teachers. It's actually a very natural part of nurturing our digital community. For example, 4 years ago, we addressed those teacher technology gaps by offering very specific PD to help teachers with the initial technology integration when we first went one-to-one. But like any good technology process, it's now time to update that and move beyond the introductory phase to focus on core competencies that we've derived from Bright Bites data and are reinforced by Goal 4, the strategic plan, being transformational teaching and learning. Those recommended competencies to focus on include 21st century learning and common language for instructional technology integration, Sandler method technology integration with regards to 4 C's, and student-directed learning and digital citizenship, which Amber Hooper and I will discuss next.
So the TMC and the library have reached quite a few students this year, as you can see from the push-in that Matt did, the work that the librarians have done, but we cannot directly teach every single student at this large school, which is why we would like to create a quarterly online PD opportunity for teachers focused on the 4 C's as it pertains to both information literacy and digital literacy. On the information literacy side, the library would take that and we'd focus on the creative and critical thinking skills through curated PD on information literacy, like source evaluation, navigating digital media, search strategies, citing sources, copyright and fair use.
And then on the digital literacy side, we spend time working with teachers on how to increase communication and collaboration skills through embedding digital literacy concepts into daily instruction, including student privacy within and outside of OPRF, and the importance of creating and maintaining a positive digital presence, student-driven collaboration, and digital time management and wellness. Moving into that last pink section of 21st century learning. For over 20 years, the International Society of Technology Education, or ISTE, has been the technology standard for real-world educational technology integration. And though we've done some work as a department with ISTE standards in the past, we want to make a concerted effort to begin researching and unpacking these standards for practical use here at OPRF to ensure that we are on par with industry standards. This will not necessitate any immediate student or teacher buy-in next year, as this work will tie heavily in with our technology PD plan and overall 5-year EdTech plan that Chris is going to talk to you about.
And just briefly, what we're trying to outline here are the main points that we're hoping to address in each one of the 5 years, including the one that we're currently in. And we have an opportunity with the curriculum build that's going on right now, getting ready for the pilot of that curriculum next year. We have an opportunity where things are kind of unfrozen. And so we have a chance to implement some change into that. And so the curriculum needs to be able to scale up. You can see the team here that we're working with are excellent, but they're finite. So in order to reach all students, what we need to be able to do is empower teachers and have them ready so that as these topics come up through the course of their various subject matters, they're able to talk sensibly to digital citizenship, digital literacy, etc. And so what we're working with right now is on that embed, as that English curriculum is being developed, embedding these in there, and then through the course of the next 3 years, you can see where that focus of shift changes from us delivering what you've seen presented here the excellent work that the librarians and that the TLC have done with teachers and with students, but only reaching a small population. That needs to be expanded not only to the freshman class, to all 4 years and throughout other departments. So as that curriculum development goes forward, so too will the technology embedded into it, so that that truly does become 21st century curriculum. At this point, I wanted to offer up for any questions, anything that you have in mind.
Question? Oh,
So when you collect the survey data on utilization attitudes of the students, can you break it down by demographics?
Right now, the Bright Byte survey does not, it's an anonymous survey, and they do not have any demographic information in there, although we have mentioned that in the past, and we're hoping that that changes in the future.
So I think
I asked that question.
Yeah, it's a valid question.
I'm not surprised.
What we are happy about is that we've expanded into the advisories, so we are hoping that that is more representative of our true student demographic. But we would like data to support that.
But we don't know what it means if we don't have the, I mean, we can't, even the comments about making suggestions that perhaps the dip in, dips in certain areas had to do with having more students and an inference of, it's a wider representation, but we still don't know who's driving if it is indeed, a dip because of having this added presence, and who were the people before. I mean, so the whole idea of having the demographic information, if we truly are adhering to our strategic plan, is it's like non-negotiable. So whether if Bright Bytes isn't willing to do it, then who is? Because this is the only way we get to understand how how we're meeting our goals with our students.
About 2 years ago, Bright Bytes started adding the option for districts to create custom questions. If you would like us, unfortunately we have to do it next year, to add a specific demographic question, we can do that. We have a limited number of questions to work with, but we can add that to the survey so we can at least know. Again, we want to still keep it anonymous so kids will actually take it, but we can ask for race information. We actually asked a racial equity question this year, and we can ask them about what year they're in, so we can get some demographic information.
When you say, I'm sorry, racial equity question, what is that?
This is in our full set of data. What we asked was, how could we, I'm going from memory, how could we equitably provide resources for students? And this was asked to students. And I sat down with Lamar, and we came up with this question to ask students what was preventing them from taking advantage of technology resources if this resource would be created, whether it was the stigmatism behind getting help, the race of the students in the space, the race of the student, race of the people, the staff, different, we broke it down into like 7 or 8 different choices based on race and student comfortability with actually reaching out to get resources. We can also make that information available to you.
Okay, it's just, I don't know what it would mean.
Well, it'll,
Something together.
yeah, it helps us because we tried a couple of years ago to provide technology tutoring to students, but we didn't know how to reach out. We didn't know basically how to make any kind of imprint with the students. And so over the last couple of years, we've talked about providing some resource to all students, but we want all students to be able to take advantage of it equitably.
No, I understand the intent, and I'm saying, but without a breakdown by race of who's answering. If you don't know who's answering the question, it could be the presumption of white students that the reason black students aren't accessing you know, technology is because of issues of but who's answering the question, you know, is valuable in understanding how to move forward, because whose story is really being told.
But I think, excuse me, I think what I heard though too was that that's a indicator you can put in. Correct?
Yes. Yes.
Well, we've been asking for that for 4 years now, since we start, but it predates you.
Yeah.
After that first year, the whole idea of looking at equity with our one-to-one program, and then how we're using technology. I mean, there are other questions I'm sure others have. I have others that have to do with the 4 C's aspect of this. But in terms of understanding access by our students, we can't have that. And if that is, it has been an option, because it has been asked about. It was the same issue with the pay consulting, that we can't use surveys that don't allow us to have demographic breakdowns. It doesn't help our cause of trying to reach the goals that we have with our strategic plan. And that's not directed at you all, it's just, that has to be how we look at it. And we continue to reach this, we can do it next year. And I'm feeling my own, this term shortened, and in terms of board time, and we're losing daylight in a lot of respects.
What we can definitely do is get an idea of who's responding, so in the future that will be there, period. In the aspect of like how do those racial demographics or any of the other demographics break into the answers that are provided, that may be difficult to break out, but we're definitely going to push bright lights in that direction as well.
Okay.
I had two topics I wanted to address. This slide, but I want to go in the data you presented that showed comparing to national into West 40. Can you flip to that just briefly? One more. Oops. Okay. So, there we go. So if I look at this data, it tells me we are basically at the average or even a tad below West 40. And I don't know what that means. Am I reading that correctly to start with?
Yeah, I do know that there was a limited amount of schools that had replied by the time this data was pulled, and a lot of
Yeah, so I guess my first question is,
participated. Yeah.
who would that peer group be? And I'd like to just understand, and where we are compared to them on our journey, meaning how we've been in a 1-to-1 since whatever, yesterday. 26. So that's the technology piece, but it would be helpful just to understand how we compare, because that's a geographical peer group, to get a sense of that one kind of stood out at me. I didn't know. I guess I was expecting that we would be ahead, but so that's why it stood out at me. So I'd appreciate understanding what we may know about the districts in West 40 and where they are in their journey versus us. Is that a fair act?
That is a fair question.
Okay.
I believe I talked to our Bright Lights rep last year, and I think, don't quote me, because again, this might be a information data sharing issue. I think I can get specific school information, but you also have to remember a lot of West 40 schools don't get Bright Lights until the end of the year.
Okay.
So when we come back at the end of the year, we can have that information for you.
Okay. Just be understanding where we compare.
We're doing a departmental update in May, so maybe we can have a brief update as part of that presentation.
Okay. My second question was, it relates to the slide that you had up that I asked you to flip off from, which I just want you to use your technology. Now, the question is this, you use the word teacher technology gaps. And you know, in terms of advancing, does this include mandatory embedded technology in our curriculum?
So far, we have done supplemental, mostly voluntary PD
Okay.
where it was available. I think it's an opportunity to take a look at the priorities. I know that we have a home in transformative education, which is where we've been welcomed in, and we've got some support in that area, definitely. That's where we saw the English curriculum as an opportunity to jump in and embed it into what is already being done, and through that PD infuse these 4 C's in there.
Believe me, we'd love to do more.
So yeah, I guess if you have, you know, because it's a cultural thing, and if you're have not grown up with it, and I might fit into that mold, sometimes unless it's forced on you, and you're not going to do it. So
Yeah, and just a follow-up to that was your focus on scalability and implementation. I mean, do you have an understanding where the pushback is, how effective your implementation is, and have you looked at your scalability plans in context of other schools that have gone to this environment to ensure that whatever plan you go down is one that's most likely to overcome the natural reticence and lack of use?
Yeah, through, through IETL and COSIN especially, those are some good organizations that I've been working with other districts in order to get, some of them are behind us, some of them are ahead of us, and obviously environments differ from place to place, but in those tools that are effective there, those are already being practiced by our TLC and librarians. And I think when we saw the graphs,
when I see support faculty focused delivery, okay, as scalability. So how is that scaling it up to faculty that are reticent to use it? So in other words, what I'm not seeing is, and what we encountered at the very beginning of D90 when I talked with a number of other school districts across the state that what the technology is, there's a natural reticence, especially for more senior faculty members, in truly getting behind this and using it, unless, to Tom's point, it becomes something that's a major focus of the district where people are required to start doing it. So if it's a purely voluntary basis, I am not hearing anything to overcome teacher reticence, and I'm not hearing anything that says you're evaluating implementation and effectiveness of implementation. And so I'm not understanding how that scalability piece works at all. So I'm just trying to understand that.
I think it's identifying a need. I think how to meet that need may not be as clearly defined as it needs to be, but that's why it's in the future, so we can get there and make it happen.
But I do think the step in that direction is the work being done through transformative education, particularly in the English department, so that it becomes a part of that curriculum piece. And then as we move forward, move out. But I think that's the first step in that direction. And it's my understanding that it'll be a part of as we continue to look at our curriculum and see other places where we can infuse it in that curriculum.
I'm gonna just jump on what Dr. Pruitt Adams said. This endeavor and the work we do, we can't make a dedicated push in terms of what is done in the curriculum without the help of a whole lot of other people who aren't sitting up here. So it's important to remember that. Like, we're just one piece of a puzzle that is changing. Like, it took many departments to get together and make logistically the English embed work. So to answer the scalability question, we hope to learn from this on how we can scale it up. And in addressing reticent teachers, I think it's a matter of, as we scale up, we have to address those teachers directly.
And also supporting and lauding those teachers who are doing excellent work, two of which are sitting right next to me right now. So we have good faculty here.
Yes, we do. And the question I have has to do, and we have talked about the reticence of certain teachers and the volunteer aspect of this work, and also, bandwidth, that there's only so much, certain people can do. But I'm still wondering what optimally the goals are. I mean, there's a lot there, but we're still in a place, and I go back to there was something you said earlier about students, in terms of the 4C, collaboration and communication. What's the other? Critical thinking. The critical thinking and collaboration, those two pieces, the fact that we aren't seeing significant gains in educational settings such as this, when the addition of one-to-one was truly a way, and one of the goals was to have that happen. And so having such a diverse set of goals, I'm wondering if we need to hone in on things that may be more specific to truly have an idea of what impact is. And I'm only saying that because in terms of the piloting with the English program, I did hear things that, teachers really seem to like it, some things that you were saying, but what's the model for how this is being evaluated and informing process? Because it has been a few years now that we've heard your frustration with trying to reach out and not having the ability to necessarily go into classrooms or work with divisions or teachers who don't sign up. So I don't know how we ever get to goals like this if we don't have a way of getting buy-in. And maybe it's too diffuse, I don't know, but it seems to be a lot of goals and we haven't reached those, the first ones we had when we brought the one-to-one program on in a significant way.
I just want to say that this has got to be the most supportive and communicative time that I've seen this work done. So even though it may look relatively dark in terms of how quickly we're moving, the support of Dr. Pruitt-Adams, the support of Greg Johnson, the inclusion of us, and the work that has been going on in isolation within the work of the curriculum build is truly heartening. And we're, despite the frustrations that we're feeling, and we get, we are encouraged by the cooperative atmosphere that's grown here over the last few years.
And I certainly see that and appreciate it as well, but it does lead me back to perhaps the visionary, aspirationalness, making up words now, of some of the goals. If we could be, perhaps my dissertation advisors would say, when I was writing, don't try to light up the whole building, just build a small fire, you can do bigger stuff later.
Set an objective and make it.
Yeah, so
Right.
We've been talking, and these same kind of things, so if there's momentum with that, the pieces that seem to, that you have partnership and authority now in collaboration, it seems to be maybe some need to be rethought, so it doesn't have to feel as though it's dire, as opposed to, these are the areas where we can maintain and see, growth and evaluate effect.
That's one of the biggest reasons why, in terms of the teacher 4C, that we want to come up with those core competencies and be able to evaluate growth across those competencies, which hopefully will address some of the shortcomings of teaching in a one-to-one classroom, like what that really means in terms from lesson planning to lesson delivery. And also all of that will be aligned to ISTE standards. And again, there will be some kind of growth tool created in that. It's also important to remember these are our recommendations. We'll now spend the next 3 to 4 months actually breaking down how all of these things will get accomplished, including a timeline, who's in charge of it, who we need to talk to. They may get edited, so that by the time we come back to you in May, we will have what's been happening, what the detailed plan is, step by step, timelines, all that good stuff. These are just our initial recommended focus areas and action plans. And that's going to be our job for the next 3 to 4 months. Action plan every day.
I do think once you have the measure of accountability built in, the piece that I think will help with this being a part of the English curriculum is the intentionality of it. That it would be built into the curriculum in such a way that it brings attention to the correlation between the technology aspect of it and those 4 C's and the curriculum. I think that's the piece that when it's done kind of how we've been doing it in isolation, people learn it, they use it, but they don't see the interconnectivity with this. And hopefully through the work you're going to do in the English department, it will be intentionally, which keeps it in the forefront of people's mindset as that's done. So hopefully from moving forward, you'll begin to see more significant gains as it relates to that.
Is there any other questions or comments? Thank you.
Thank you. So that takes us to the policy section. So what I'm going to do, the board has seen this before. We're bringing it for first read. The team and I have gone through this. We've answered the questions that were sent to us tied to this. And so if there are any questions, or would you prefer we go through each one individually?
Does anyone have any questions on a specific policy?
Yes.
Yes.
Well, yes, I have a question on a specific policy and then kind of an overarching question on multiple policies.
Taylor?
My question on a specific one is the school year calendar, and it actually dovetails into our discussion we just had in my mind.
Okay.
And the reference to e-learning days. Because I thought as a board said we were tabling that, and it seems like it's coming back. And in my opinion, that should not be embedded in that. It should be, I think it needs to be very specifically discussed, or policy specific around it needs to be developed.
Okay, the reason we put it, the board did talk about tabling it, and the reason administration moved the policy forward, and we knew that it would be up for discussion this evening, and it would probably get pulled, but wanted to just have the opportunity to say that the policy by law was supposed to be approved in January. The piece with the e-learning is not mandated that we do e-learning. It gives us the option if we choose to do e-learning. And the consensus of the team was it didn't relegate us to doing it, and that if at some point in time we decided to come back, because in all of the meetings that we're going to regarding instruction and technology talks about how instruction is going to change over the years to be more off-site based, open classroom types. It would give us the latitude if at some point in time we chose to do that. We did understand that the board may want to strike that statement, and if the board chooses to strike that statement, we would recommend that the policy move forward to be in compliance with our ISB guideline. Did that help at all?
Yeah, so I mean, I guess if we can peel it off and meet the requirement from the policy, but I would, my recommendation would be to peel that off and have it be handled separately.
And we were prepared for that. We just wanted to bring it forward so we would be in compliance. So we were prepared to strike that language.
And I'll just add in, that was my understanding as well, that as we tabled it, it would be a, if necessary, policy. Are there others that want to weigh in?
So just so I'm clear, we're going to strike the language tied to e-learning, correct?
That's,
That's what I want, we need this.
yeah,
Consensus that way too, so.
I'm in agreement with Dr. Moore and
And that was one. My second was, as I said, through these policies, I found a couple references to specific actions that were tied to the word principle, and I know there was a response, but because of our organizational structure, how do we handle that? I mean, it sounds like we need to, in each policy, be very specific, unless there's some overarching way to say that, you know, for all of our policies, principle equals something else.
So-
But that's
What we did in our most recent meeting with press was to indicate to them that it should say superintendent or designee, because for each policy that designee may change over time. And so that's, once this is done, it will be changed to superintendent or designee. If it is the board's preference moving forward, when we bring these policies forward, we can just say that. But that's the standard that's been indicated to press, to change it to superintendent or designate.
And I agree, and I think we'd have to go through all our policies and make sure they're all cleaned up. I mean, that's something that needs to.
because I think it would reduce confusion with our school-wide community.
Right. We even did the same thing, I will say, with the 5 essentials, so that they know how, that our staff knows how to rate them.
So what you're saying is that moving forward, regardless of how press has it for our
Press knows to change it for our needs, superintendent or designate.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Okay. So, as you know, we bring forward future agenda items, and so the next item comes from a recommendation to have a discussion about the policy committee. I will say it has kind of evolved in different ways over time. And so one of the recommendations was from our board member, Mr. Mortieri, to have a board discussion about what that looks like. And so this is an item that is now open for board discussion.
Yeah, so I just thought that having a policy committee with having a policy committee with a board member or two and one administrator or two, no bigger than that did some of this vetting, right? Went through all the policies, make sure all the language was up to speed, identified all those policies where superintendent has the obligation to establish a process by which. So then we as a board just need to know that that process was established, come up with some sort of rubric for that, and so that it makes it easy on the administration to report out. In other words, a way to make our oversight and governance role easier and replicable year to year, so we know that everything that's supposed to be in place according to our policies is in fact in place. We know who all the designees are, et cetera. So a lot of this work would just happen offline, get reported back to the board in a broader concept, and be something that makes the board's job easier over time.
And that framework has been established. We, and I'm saying we and hold myself accountable, have not followed that consistently in the last year or so.
Right.
So I'm going to own that. Board member Spivey was our person, and we would review and then send her the feedback, and we've been remiss in doing that.
So just getting back to that practice, and you know, when I went to the conference this November, I did go to the policy committee subgroup, working group, whatever called those things. And really, every board that talked about having this process in place said that it made their jobs easier and it made their oversight responsibilities clearer, and something where they had a regular schedule for, we know we're going to get a report from the administration here, here, and here that says these are the designees, this process has been put in place, so everything is done. Even in some of these policies we just approved, there's places where the superintendent shall require that all teachers receive some kind of training. Do we check that every year? Do we know? It's in our policies, it's our job to know that. It's a real simple thing, I'm sure you've done it, but we haven't done our job as the board in the oversight. So it's finding that stuff, bringing it up to the board, and having a regular check-in. And like you said, Dr. Pruitt-Adams working collaboratively to ease the process.
So clarification, just from my understanding, I know we as a team looked through them multiple times, but just so I'm clear with what you are asking, we review them. There are some you have to review, as you know, annually, and there are some that on a cycle you have to review. The ones that we review annually, when we do them as a small committee, whoever the board rep is, and are you asking, in addition to what Gail already attaches with the synopsis or recommendation at that point in time on if that should happen, or are you asking for another cycle of information? Did that make sense what I just said?
Not quite. So let me just say, so in my mind, there's a couple of things that go on in the policies. And a lot of them are written where the superintendent shall or designate shall do this. Then it's our job to make sure that was done. We don't have an input on how it's done, but we just need to know that it was done. So in a number of those instances, this is a process we went through at D200. We cleaned up over time so that the board could do its governance role. So it came up in light of student data and confidentiality and compliance with federal and state law. That's how it came up in D200. And we discovered we weren't. And so we went through a vetting, and now every year, there's a regular report where, we went through and all this stuff, and we know we're in compliance, so the board knows. And it's just a report to the board. So it's more of a notice to the board that these things are done. And then we've done our governance job, you've done your implementation job, and the public knows everything that's in our policies that's supposed to be
It's
done.
like an annual summary, not every.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
But the process for that, if I'm hearing you, that we got a couple of levels. One, since our organization reorg, there are some places that we have to make sure that the designation is. Yes. But then the oversight piece is
Right.
where, and we have our calendar of reports, but to add and to clarify the governance piece, reviewing and even some way of highlighting which policies actually have that language in them, so that we know which ones we need to.
Right.
Okay.
And that would be the job of the policy.
Right.
To report on.
Okay.
So, when do we see this committee and its two volunteers for
Who's
the board starting?
You usually give us a designee. Gail, do you know who the designee is for policy? That's something we usually do at the start of the year.
I'm saying for this, if we're going to be a little more detailed, to Ralph's model of having two board members and how whoever we're designated are, it would be Ralph and it could be Craig since he's not here.
That's the right thing to do.
That's mine.
The only thing I was saying, if we already had one, we just would add one.
Right, I was saying Craig, since he's not here.
Okay. And for the administration, it's Roxana and I. But although each member of executive cabinet has policies that they have oversight of.
So,
Just so that I'm clear, first of all, I very much support and like the concept, because I think it will streamline and there's a need for some discipline. So that part I'm fully in support of. When I saw this on the agenda, my question was, is that the entire scope of this policy committee? Meaning, are there any new policies or that we have interest in that would be initiated? And I'm not necessarily, is it beyond? I'm just trying to get. Is that the full scope of it?
Tom, only if requested by the board. So, for instance, as I was sitting listening to Dr. Moore talk about the survey data, my question about the demographics, maybe we ought to have a policy that says if we have any survey data, we're going to the extent possible collect demographic data, and that should be a new policy. And so if a reference from the board was we need a policy on this to really help implement our equity piece or our financial oversight or whatever, then the policy committee would work with the administration and come up with a recommendation for the board. But that would only be at the board's request.
Right, at the request of the board, but I just was wondering if the scope was limited to just kind of tidying up existing policy or providing any role in new or modified policy.
I think that's always been the purview of the policy committee.
Right, the historical policy
Right.
committee covered that, but the way he shaped it was narrower, and I just want to make sure I understand.
Yeah. And I would understand the policy committee would do that, but once again, only at the request of the board.
I understand.
We wanted to know.
So I think it's, and maybe we do need to spell out, that was always understood as part of the process. I don't think we have been as intentional as we could be with making clarifications like that. And your example tonight, I think, is a good one for our board to think about. And I'm thinking about how we changed the policy for contracts. We put that in the policy about every 5 years. So,
And we've had in recent meetings discussion about as it relates to sustainability.
right.
And, that's kind of something that's out there that, I would say that with our more significant policies like our racial equity and our gender equity, those ones needed an army and a force, but there are other policies that could be, handled in my mind. So, okay.
So the other piece, I'm sorry, Sarah, go ahead. No, I was just going to say the other piece that this brings out, I think, and I'm going to use the word intentional again, is changing our focus a bit on the policy section of our agenda, because it has been pretty much the kind of press updates, but it is the purview of the board, so that is an opportunity for us to dig a little deeper. And I think having a committee that works with the administration will help hone in on fleshing that out a little bit more. So.
I was just gonna say, unless there's somebody else who strongly would like to do it, I would volunteer for this committee.
Volunteers office graciously accepted.
Love to have.
So-
Man, I thought for sure you'd be jumping out of your seat.
I defer to my colleague from West Virginia. And I pick West Virginia. It's like a hearing there. So thank you, Sarah, for volunteering.
I mean, unless somebody else, I don't wanna step on toes, but.
Praise be
They
to
all
God.
know her back.
My guess is you're not stepping on any toes.
Doesn't seem like it.
So I do have a question, and maybe this is a Gail question. So given that we are a committee of the whole. Do you know my question? Yeah. So how do we, is this going to be a standalone committee, or are we seeing this as a policy? Because if we look policy development committee, which would be different from our policy committee, with the narrower scope, it would not be necessarily a ongoing committee, but could be, because we have Open Meetings Act issues and things like that. So that's Gail.
I would suggest, because a part of the structure for committee of the whole is to have an instruction committee, a policy committee, and a finance committee. And as long as we don't exceed the 2 board members, we should be able to work under the auspices of how the current structure, we're just adding 1 additional member.
Right. Okay.
So we should be fine.
Make sure we're full transparency. Okay.
That's always a good check, though.
Did I do good, Gail? Well, that completes all the items we have on the agenda.
So
I'll
moved.
turn it over to Dr. Moore.
Are there any future agenda items other than the several we've already talked about? Okay. Move to adjourn.
So moved.
Second, third.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.